Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 34 of the English with Kirsty podcast. And today I want to talk about something that people sometimes say to me that they're worried about, and it's their pronunciation. So however much they learn, however many new words they know, and however well they can put their sentences together, sometimes people just say, I don't think that my accent sounds good enough, and I don't think I pronounce words well. And that's just something I wanted to look at today, because there are some things that you can do about that to make it better. I think everybody who's learning another language will have some kind of accent. It's unusual to sound completely like a native speaker, but that's okay. It's part of who you are as an I don't like it if I think that I sound really English when I'm speaking German, but I know that there will be some words that I will say slightly differently. And I don't think that's a problem. When it becomes a problem is when it's so strong and the pronunciation is so different from how it should be that people can't understand you. And that's when something needs to be done about it, because you won't be able to communicate with people, and that would make things harder for you. So this is something that I talk about in my book, in chapter 49 of the book. There are 7 points about this. We're going to go through a few of them today, but the rest, if you want to read the rest, then you can get the book and find out about the other points and the rest of the tips and information on a number of subjects about learning English and using English at work. So the book is called Feel Confident Using Your Business English, and it will be linked in the show notes, which is the page for that is www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 34. So what can you do if you're worried about your pronunciation? Well, first of all, you need to identify the problem, because there may not be a problem. You may just be really critical of yourself, and there might not be a problem at all. So try and think about, is there a problem? And even though if you're worried about your pronunciation, you probably don't want to speak very much, it's really good to get some feedback. So whether that is going to have lessons with a teacher, or speaking to a tandem partner or another native speaker, it's good to get some feedback to see whether they can understand you, and if not, which areas are making it difficult for them to understand, because that could also be from your own native language. I know that I work with a lot of German speakers, and some of them really don't like our TH sound, like in Thursday, or think, or something like that. And sometimes it's not so much at the beginning of the word, but when it comes at the end or in the middle of a word, it's hard to get your teeth around this TH sound, because that isn't in German. And I know that in other languages there isn't a distinction between the R sound, like rice, and the L sound, like lice. And rice is tasty, lice are something you don't want to have. So it's important to make these two sounds, but it's harder if you don't have this sound in your native language. And another one I've noticed is the W sound seems to cause a problem for some people, like Wednesday or weekend. So if these sounds are causing you problems, if they're harder to say, then when you're reading text, rather than just reading them, try to read them aloud, so that you have to actually say these sounds rather than just thinking them in your head, and really focus on trying to get them to sound right. And if you can, or if you want to, then try and record yourself too, because then you can hear exactly what it sounds like. You don't have to show anyone else. You can if you want to, but just try to read aloud and really focus on these sounds which are giving you problems. And moving on from there, another thing that will help your speaking is if you do more listening, because when you listen, you'll hear how other people pronounce these letters, and it will be easier for you then, because you get more practice, you hear them more often, and it will become easier for you as well. So Don't think that the only way to improve your speaking is to speak. It's an important way, but listening will help you too, because you'll be used to hearing the words, hearing these groups of letters that are more difficult, and hopefully you'll then be able to pronounce them better yourself. And one of the problems with English is the way that we pronounce things. I know some languages where whatever you see, you just say that. And I know that sometimes it happens anywhere in the country, but when I lived in London, parts of London, you knew who was visiting, because some people, even English people, would pronounce the names of the places in a different way from everyone else. So if you lived in that area, you knew how to say them because everybody said them that way. But if somebody came as a visitor, then they would find a different pronunciation. And that's normal. It happens all over England. And like a common example is this shire that we have for counties. So Yorkshire, Cambridgeshire, Warwickshire, Derbyshire, all these places, but it says S-H-I-R-E at the end, and a lot of people say shire because we do have shire horses. So the places must be shire as well, but they're not, they're shire. And there are silent letters and all kinds of unusual things in our place names. So I don't expect, and English people won't expect learners to know all these different place names, but there are some groups of letters which can be pronounced in different ways. So it's good if you watch out for them, and when you see them, think, okay, which one is it? For example, like ough. You can have words like rough, or through, or thought. All these different words, it's a different way of pronouncing ough. And the same with augh. So you can have caught, like I caught a cold, and cough. And the same with ch. So most of the time it's a ch sound, like chocolate. I had to use that example. I love chocolate. So you get the ch sound, or sometimes it's like a k sound. So Christmas, or Christmas tree. You've got this. You don't pronounce the h at all. So if there are groups of letters that do that, it's good to know what they are and just to be aware of them, because that will help with your pronunciation. And the other thing I forgot to mention was when you are doing listening practice, you will also hear where people put the emphasis on the words, because it's not the same all the way through. People stress certain syllables, the language flows in a certain way, and if you don't copy that, or if you put the stress on the wrong part of the word, you may know the right word and your sentence may be perfect, but it may confuse the people that are listening to you, because they expect the stress to be on a different part, maybe at the beginning instead of the end, and then they think, what was that word that he or she just said, because it's not what they're expecting or used to hearing. So that's another good thing about listening. You can hear where people put the emphasis on the different words. Okay, so that was just some things I wanted to run through about pronunciation and things that you can do to help your pronunciation. So they were: 1, identify the problem. 2, be a good listener as well and get lots of listening practice. And 3, think about common letters that are pronounced in different ways. So don't worry so much about the place names, because lots of people get them wrong and they are not easy to predict. But in general words, look at like the ough, augh, ch, and see if you can find any more where there are different ways of pronouncing them, and then just make sure that when you find a new word with those letters, that you're using the right pronunciation for that word. Okay, so that was all I wanted to say about that. If you do want to read the rest of that chapter, you can buy the book, and there will be a link for the book on the show notes page. And the show notes page for this episode is www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 34. Okay, I hope you have a good week and have fun learning English. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.